Good morning. How is everyone? I'm going to start off with an apology. I was at a leadership conference a couple of weeks ago and I caught a virus from a colleague and it left me with a little bit of a cough. So if I'm clearing my throat or coughing, just know I'm not sick. I just have this lingering cough that just doesn't want to seem to go away. So if I have a couple of those moments, just so you guys know, like, I'm not trapping you in a room with me to get you sick. While I was there, I actually got this book recommendation, and it was about this guy named Will Guidara. It was actually by him and about him. And he was the general manager of this fine dining restaurant in New York City, across the street from Central Park. And Will had been the general manager that was in charge of bringing this restaurant from a one-star restaurant up to a three-star restaurant. So in 2007, he had brought this restaurant all the way up, made a big change in this restaurant. Took a lot of work. And they were anxiously awaiting the New York Times food critic to come back in and give them their review to see if they were going to be a 4-star restaurant, which would just like put them on another level on the map as far as fine dining goes. And they were kind of living in the identity already of this 4-star restaurant. They were just waiting for the official review. And then we know what happened in 2008. There was a financial crisis. And Will and his team at his restaurant, 11 Madison Park, were suddenly in this situation where everything that they had done, everything that they had worked for, was now really not working because the people that normally would go in there and spend money weren't really able to because of this financial crisis. And something to keep in mind when we're talking about shifting a pattern, breaking a pattern, shifting timelines, that pattern that we're wanting to change, at some point, it was beneficial for us. Whether we like to admit it or not, it served us, or if it's a generational pattern, it serves someone in our lineage. It served us in some way at some point. So it's important to keep that in mind as you're wanting to shift this pattern, as you're wanting to change it. Just remember to show it a little, maybe not respect, but at least a little compassion, because at some point it was doing something for you. So I'm Leah Pappas. I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I use hypnotherapy as a tool to help people after we've spotted a pattern. I use it to help shift the pattern and get you to that new place a little more quickly. So what I'm hoping today is to leave you all with some tools and some ways to be able to spot those patterns that you're wanting to shift so that you can break free of them. You can own your own timeline. Because when we're talking about owning our own timeline, ultimately what we're wanting is agency. We're wanting the choice. We're wanting to tell those patterns, thank you, goodbye, we're done with you, and move forward and own our own timeline. And so hopefully today, as you leave here, you're able to go, yeah, I know how to spot these patterns now. If you don't, I have a quick 15-minute thing that I'm offering you guys. It's called a pattern interrupt session. And that's just to really quickly focus in on the pattern and what's the next best step towards shifting that pattern. So when we're wanting to make a change, the first step that we are going to want to do is really just notice that we want to make a change. So if you're already there, you're good. Pat yourself on the back. You've taken the first step towards making a change simply by noticing something here isn't working. Something's going on. I'm doing something. I keep ending up in this cycle. I need something to change. That's step number one. Check it off the list. You're done. You've got that. So now you're like, okay, cool. I know something needs to change, but like, how? What's next? So the next thing we're going to do after we've decided that we need to shift. So points of friction are going to be those moments where we're noticing the thing that we want to change. We look at our bank account and there's just not enough money in there. Something needs to change. We go out on a date and the person says the same thing that your ex used to say. And you're like, oh my God, something needs to change. Those are points of friction. The thing that you need to keep in mind in those points of friction, that's the result of a pattern. That's not the pattern. So this is where a lot of people get stuck because you're noticing the result of the pattern, but you have to even zoom it out just a little bit more and realize that the thing that you're wanting to change is the result of the pattern. There's something else going on that is resulting in that pattern. So that's why you can be like, yeah, I'm gonna timeline jump, I'm gonna shift, I'm gonna go, abundance, love, all of the things, and then you somehow just still are in that same spot. It's because you're focusing on the point of friction and not the pattern that is resulting in the point of friction. So we're gonna look for those moments, and then we're gonna go, okay, that's the point of friction. What's playing into this? What's feeding into this? So now we're gonna look for points of discomfort. Kind of sounds the same, right? Kind of is the same. But the points of discomfort are going to be those moments where it's going to feel two different ways. There are two different ways you can feel the discomfort in a pattern shift. So this is where you're gonna wanna zone in on the discomfort and get curious about it. I'm fighting with my boyfriend again. This is super uncomfortable. Really big blowout, but we fight every week. That's a comfortable discomfort. That's a normalized discomfort. That's the pattern. That's part of the pattern. I'm not fighting with my boyfriend. Things are very peaceful, and we normally fight every week, and this is very uncomfortable. I better go start a fight with him. That is a different type of discomfort. That's the pattern shifting. And that type of discomfort, you have to breathe into, you have to lean into, and allow it. Because that type of discomfort is the kind that we need to welcome in as we're shifting patterns and breaking them. Because ultimately, a new pattern is going to be kind of uncomfortable. Because that old pattern, remember, it was keeping us safe. It was doing something for us. It was benefiting us in some way. That old pattern wants to stay alive. So it's gonna like give you those nudges to go start that fight with your boyfriend or spend the money, whatever it is. The other thing you're going to want to look for is places where something feels really easy, very automatic. I spend way too much money, but I've been doing better. And that band I like just announced they're doing a concert nearby and the tickets are on sale. So I'm just gonna get them because I've been doing good and I'm gonna splurge. I'll figure it out. That was really easy. It was really easy to make that call. And that's that pattern at play again. That was really easy. It would have been more uncomfortable to go, man, I'm gonna have to miss that concert and that sucks because I really like that band. But I've been really working on this pattern and I'm just gonna make this call and I'll see them next time they're around because I'll be in a better spot. So there are a few different things there that we can be looking at as we're wanting to start to notice those patterns so that we can break them. And getting curious about it. Not approaching that pattern with judgment, not approaching it with self-shaming, just approaching it with curiosity and understanding and realizing that it's time we want to do something different. So now's the fun part. We get to start timeline shifting, because that sounds really fun, right? So when we're talking about timeline shifting, we're talking about wanting to be on a different life path, a different destination maybe. So when we're starting to do the shifting, I'm gonna call out a pattern that I notice a lot. And so pay attention here, because when I'm working with people, I notice this so much that everybody needs to know about it. And you're gonna notice it when you're in the middle of changing a pattern, and you're gonna go, oh yeah, that lady, Leah at the West Clocks thing, she was talking about this, and this is what's happening right now. So a lot of times when we think about shifting timelines, we're like, okay, I'm on this timeline, and now I'm gonna jump over and I'm shifting. I'm shifted into a whole new timeline. And that can happen, and it's cool and fun, and like, so I don't wanna like mislead you guys and like, you can't like do an automatic shift. You can. But a lot of times, a timeline shift is a little more like, ooh, I'm here and I'm kind of moving over and I'm kind of pressing up against like the membrane of something, and you're kind of pushing through. And so what happens is people, they start doing the new habit. They start doing the new pattern. They're shifting. They're like, yeah, I'm getting over into this new timeline. I'm living it. I'm doing it. And then they do the old pattern. And they're like, see, this is just who I am. I can't change. I'm back here in this old timeline. I'm back here doing the same old thing. No. When you're shifting, just because you've moved from here to over here, and then you move back a little bit, that doesn't mean you're back over there. You're already in a different place than you were before. So this is something to really, really be aware of. This is going to make the difference for you guys. Allowing yourself to, the universe isn't testing you. A lot of people are like, it's tests from the universe. The universe is testing me. The universe is giving you an opportunity. The universe is going, hey, here's some more chances to show that you're making that change. These are opportunities that we're being given to make change, to do something different. And simply by having awareness of those situations, we're somewhere different than we were before, because before you weren't even noticing it. You didn't even know that thing was going on. And now you're noticing it, and so what? Sometimes you're gonna buy the concert ticket. Cool, have fun. Sometimes you're gonna get in an argument, and maybe something good comes of that. Sometimes we're shifting those patterns, and the old thing happens, and we need to depersonalize that old thing. Just because we did it once doesn't mean like we're all the way back there. We're all the way back over there. So a pattern that I was dealing with for a while, I used to go out on the weekends and I'd have cocktails, a few at dinner, and enjoyed my cocktail at dinner. But I always woke up with anxiety, like for a few days after. The worst hangovers. I could not even, one cocktail at dinner, and especially even more after I had my Reiki attunement. I don't know if anyone else, I'm in the right audience to ask, like, did anybody else notice this when you got Reiki attuned? Because that was like crazy. I all of a sudden was so much more sensitive to that. But I was realizing I was in this pattern. I was doing this thing that wasn't serving me. I was losing days to just anxiety, to feeling hungover. And I started thinking, well, the version of me that I want to be, she's not losing days of her life to feeling crummy. She's not doing this thing that gives her anxiety. I was noticing that pattern, but the thing I did first, I bought anxiety pills that were supposed to like normalize some kind of chemical, and because I was like, oh yeah, I'll take this and then I won't have the anxiety and it's all good. That didn't work. So over time, it became more easy for me to notice that pattern and to decide that it wasn't what I wanted in my life and then shift it. Was it super easy? There were some really like awkward social situations at the beginning where it's like, normally people would have been drinking and then I'm like here with my water, and it got easier. And the pattern shift always does. It just gets easier, and then you're on a new timeline. And I can say that I don't believe that if that pattern had continued, that I'd be here on the stage. I think that was a big part of my timeline shift. So that's why I'm sharing that story, because for me, that was a really big timeline shift, was realizing that something that was very normalized in the groups that I was in was not for me. And then realizing, like, I'm totally fine without this. So let's head back to New York. Let's go back over to Will. So it's 2008. The economy is not thriving. Will's restaurant is not thriving either. They're not doing great. They actually had gotten to a point, they had started like this side project that was like a hot dog cart. And that's what was funding this fine dining restaurant. They would have been out of business if they hadn't had this random side project hot dog cart keeping them alive. So they're realizing something needs to change because they're not doing good. So they had two choices. They could either keep doing what they were doing because it had gotten them really far. They went from 1 star to a place that was a sought out destination. You had to try to get into that place. They had come a long way. They could have gone, this worked for us and we're gonna keep doing this because look at how far it got us and we're good and we're gonna stay doing this, or go down trying. Or they could figure out something different to do. So they ended up changing up their lunch menu. Their lunch business had died off with the expense accounts because that was what kept their lunch business alive. So they decided, we're gonna create this crazy awesome lunch special to get people in, and then we gotta figure out how to get the tickets up. So they start bringing around this dessert trolley, something they had never done before. They're like, we're gonna bring the desserts right to the table at the end of their second course, their second entree. We're gonna park it here. That way they don't have to worry about ordering and the time for plating. They can just grab it and take it. Their lunchtime dessert sales went up by like 300%. Crazy. Because they were like, we've got to do something. They were cutting paper towels in half at a almost 4-star restaurant. 3 stars waiting on their 4th. Cutting paper towels in half to try and stay alive. They needed to do something different, and they were like, well, we can try this. And they tried it and it worked. And Will goes on to tell a story that a lot of people who went to lunch there in those days ended up moving up through the ranks in the businesses that they were in and becoming very well known in their industries. And they had enjoyed those lunch specials that they had formulated to get on track, just to get their head above water so that they could stop cutting paper towels in half. So they had these two choices. They could have gone down trying, waiting for that 4th star, waiting for that food critic to come in, or they could try and switch things up a little bit. And so in 2008, maybe 2009, that food critic did come in and they got their 4th star. They were able to keep themselves alive. And Will has gone on to do great things in his industry. But that could have been the end of it if he had chosen to just stick with what he had kept doing. And that's something that we need to keep in mind when we're wanting to shift timelines and we're wanting to break patterns and we're wanting to, sometimes you just need to get a little curious and get a little creative and go, how can I do this just a little bit different? How can I change this just a little bit different? After you've noticed it, after you've spotted it, you've noticed these points of tension, which is the result of the pattern. After you've noticed these points of discomfort, which might be the pattern changing, and you notice the places where it's really easy and the pattern is just kind of happening again. Once you start noticing and shifting your patterns and shifting your timeline, you can start doing things so much more freely because you're having that conscious choice. And maybe sometimes after you've got this new pattern in, you're like, I'm ready. You can make that new pattern your new unconscious pattern. So you can just kind of go, okay, well, this is working for me. So that's your new automatic operating. And just know that anytime you're getting to those points where something needs to change, you're noticing something needs to change, you can update those patterns. You've just got to get curious, approach them with curiosity, and be ready to do what you need to do to make that shift and recognize that it might be a little bit uncomfortable. But ultimately, the timeline is yours to own. It's simply just deciding that you want to own it and then doing the things that are necessary in order to do that. And hopefully with those few points that you can look towards to spot the patterns, you're able to start doing that a little more easily. And then along the way, sometimes you need support, and this whole building is full of amazing people who are loving and kind and ready to help you. And so another thing to keep in mind when you're making that shift is to surround yourself with supportive people, because the timeline is yours to own. And so you ultimately get that choice. Ding, we're done. All right, does anyone have any questions for me off the top? Or I know sometimes it's like a little bit of pressure, so I can even just come down, and if anyone has questions, you guys can find me. Yeah.
I noticed with pattern changes, oftentimes, even for myself too, it's like trying to change too many things all at once, as opposed to like the one thing, and then it gets overwhelming because, I want to exercise more, I want to eat less, I want to get to bed earlier, I want to not be on Facebook at 11 o'clock at night, I want to, and then it's like, it's like, heck with it, I'm going to just eat something and get on Facebook.
Well, first of all, good for you for being ambitious. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, because like you get that bug in you, something needs to change. I need to change something. And then you want to change everything. You want to just like completely overhaul. You want to completely, from here to here, timeline jump. It's a lot easier if you just pick maybe one thing that you think, okay, list the things out that you want to change. Put them put them on a piece of paper and then go, which one of these is going to be the most impactful for me to make a change in first? And take that thing and give it your time and attention and dedication, because what you're doing is creating a new habit. And when you're trying to do so many at the same time, it can sometimes be overwhelming. And unless you're like moving into a new house, or there are a few life changes that, like, scientifically it's shown, like you make changes a lot more quickly. Buying a new house, moving to a new city, having a baby. There are a few things that, like, big life changes where everything changes. Those are times that it's easier to change a lot of things all at once. Otherwise, pick one. Pick one thing, focus on it, give it time and dedication, because that pattern has served you in some way. So although maybe not respect, like I said earlier, but give it some compassion. And part of giving it compassion is giving it a little bit of nurturing as you're shifting it. Because those patterns, they're kind of, think of them like we always talk about, like the monkey mind. I'm sure some of you have heard of that phrase. So if you think about that pattern as like a little pet or something that you're wanting to like train or change, like you want to show it some love, but like we're going to change you too. So just pick one and give it some nurturing and compassion so that it knows, like, Facebook, I'm not going to completely quit you, but I just need some of my own time back. I can't just zone out here for 3 hours. So then that part of your mind that wants to go to Facebook isn't like, oh my God, we gotta, like, no quitting Facebook. It's like, oh, just a cutback on that. So I think that would be a good way to address trying to make all those changes. Just list them out and then tackle them one at a time. And if there are a couple that like seem compatible to shift together, then maybe pair some of them up. But don't overdo it. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? No? Yeah?
Yeah, I think what you're saying about compassion is, and curiosity is key, and having self-compassion is important, because, like you were talking about how those old patterns like to hang on to us, right? And so when we try to change them, some fear steps in.
Yes.
The protective part of us is like, oh my gosh, this is new, it's uncomfortable, I don't know what to do with this. So the negative thoughts come back in, try to pull you, or you end up kind of messing up. Like, by having that self-compassion, like, hey, it's okay. Like, this is a process.
Mm-hmm.
And not getting upset with yourself, not getting angry with yourself, because that's gonna just hold you back.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I think the self-compassion and curiosity is paramount.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I have another question.
Sure.
Multiple questions.
Yeah, I like it. Let's talk.
So with your hypnosis therapy, was that Ericksonian, or what like, because I'm interested, I'm a therapist by trade.
Sure.
So, I'm just interested in people who do hypnotherapy, and just, like, where you studied, what was,
Yeah, I trained under Rebecca Shaw. She has the American Hypnosis and Coaching Academy.
Okay.
It's based in Charleston. It's a boutique training, so it is very hands-on, one-on-one. So it was 1-on-3 in my class. There were 3 of us. So we were able to really have the hands-on, someone really overseeing us as we were learning and doing case studies and all of that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I have to do CEUs, and so I was like, oh, I'll check out hypnotherapy. Did one online, and like, yeah, it's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to use this. Like, I didn't feel ethical about it, in the sense of, like, the training you're talking about seems like I'd feel more comfortable having that hands-on training, somebody there interacting with you, teaching you.
Yeah, 100%. I think with anything, when you're learning, it's great to have mentorship, because it helps to have that oversight and have that relationship with someone that you can turn to. And I feel comfortable enough that even still, if I'm not sure what to do about this, I can reach out to her or any of the other people that were with me. So having that smaller training, you kind of get that like almost like hive mind where you can you have people you can bounce ideas off of. So yeah, it's a fast way to make shifts. It just helps move those patterns along a little faster, which is nice when we're wanting to make change. Yeah.
Leah, what do you recommend, like, say, in a situation that, like Peggy brought up, where you've got 2 or 3 things? I mean, if you were going to work with you, what would be kind of a way how that would work?
So if someone came to me and they were wanting to do all of this overhaul, I'd do pretty much exactly what I suggested. I'd say let's kind of like list these out. Let's see if there are any that pair together. And that way we can kind of zone in on the one that we think is going to make the big change. And then we can start moving through that. So if it's just a single session, then we're going to focus on the one that we think is the most changing. And then you get a recording of it to continue listening to, because we want those patterns to build, that thought pattern to continue building and building and building. So you can keep listening to it. And then I also do a group program that has, it's 6 sessions, 8 weeks, where we're working on specific things. And that's really about trust in the universe and creating that strong relationship with the universe to be able to create the way that we want to. But then there's also options to work in like a private container where we can address more things over the course of the time. So if there's a long list of things, I'm like, let's zone in on one. Or if I'm noticing like, okay, there's a few here that kind of relate. And part of the session is the pattern noticing. So here's the point of discomfort, the thing that we don't like. But what we're doing in session is, what's the pattern? That's what we're finding.
And do you do this online or in person?
Both. Yeah. So I have a website. It's unordinaryselfcare.com. On there, you will see at the top, there's a book now. It says show special. That's for the pattern interrupt sessions. So that's a 15-minute, here's the pattern, here's the thing that I want to change. And this is something that I've done over the last year. This was something that I worked on, being able to really quickly spot the patterns. So that's something that we can do. It's like a back and forth of here's a thing, and then here's the pattern I'm noticing. How's that feel? What's the next best step? What's the next best step right now to move that pattern a little bit? Yeah. All right. I think I'm running out of time. So if anyone has any more questions, I'm just going to be right over here. I don't want to throw the whole day off.
And you have cards?
I don't, but I can give you my info. Thank you. I almost started clapping too. Like, you guys are great. Thank you.